Welcome, everybody. Welcome, 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 all 232 of you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We had, I think, over 1,200 people RSVP, and we usually get about half as many as RSVP. So see people coming to the call, old friends, new friends, welcome. And let's get into it. I'm Billy Wimsatt. I am so proud to be the executive director of Movement Voter PAC. We have such an incredible team, such an incredible group of friends who you're gonna meet today. And so in the chat, about us, if you're new to MVP, we're a one-stop shop for strategically investing in local organizations to win elections, transform policy, and save the country. And thank you all so much for being a part of it. And let's get started. So first, want to invite you, because we're all organizers here, not too late to invite others to this briefing. So think in your mind of who's someone you want to share an experience with and go ahead and invite them. We are 4 days out from the worst inauguration in history. He's going to ruin MLK Day. And so just sending so much care to everyone, especially our friends and family in LA and everyone dealing with horrible situations right now. And I want to start with a prompt. Introduce yourself and share something that's going to help you survive next week. It could be chocolate, it could be friends. I have a new policy myself of anytime I'm doom scrolling or listening to a podcast, I have to be on an elliptical machine. So I'm getting in such good shape. Like there's so much doom scrolling in podcasts. And just want to encourage people to share what is sustaining you in this time as we go through this hard thing. And there was a really great piece in the Washington Post that said when people kind of are fighting against a reality in their lives, it makes it worse. So actually like accepting it and then moving through it is supposed to be helpful psychologically somehow, just sharing that. And there's a Q&A feature for questions. We'll email you the slides, video transcript, and resource in a couple of days. And let's get into it. Oh, I love all these. I'm seeing yoga and nature and community and hugs from children and singing and friends. And I made a spreadsheet of my friends and what time zones they're in so I can call them late at night and not bother my staff. Just want to really encourage, this is beautiful. Unfettered Rage, Jane Austen. Oh, this is so good. This is so good. Kittens. Yay! Okay, we have so much to celebrate. A gratitude journal. Okay, so I want to zoom out and talk quickly about the big picture. A lot of friends, like I know you all have gotten a lot of these texts from friends who are like, I'm so depressed. I'm in such a deep funk. Like, what I don't know how to what's giving you hope right now? And I had to think hard about what's giving me hope because I like to be really practical and strategic, like no bullshit hope. And what's giving me hope is we are part of a much larger story. And if you think, I try to be a student of history, and if you think about all the greatest leaps forward we've had in history, they all come out of the worst periods of history, right? So the thing about this moment with Trump is that it is going to be over at some point in 2 years, in 4 years, or at some point, eventually, this chapter will end and there will be a new chapter. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. And what we get to do is what we have to do, and uh, is, and we think of our work in 2025 and in the next period in a four-part framework, which is block, build, innovate, win, right? And the winning, the blocking is obvious. So much to block, federal level, state level. The winning is obvious. We got to win all these elections, win all these policies. But the building and innovate, I want to lean into. We're going to hear a lot from our friends on the call about the blocking and the winning. But I want to lean into this question of building and innovating because I think we have to be really honest with ourselves. I've been trying to study the right wing and what they've been doing. And if you look at our movement, it's very siloed, right? We have all these issue and constituency groups. We have the Democratic Party. We have the, left media and influencers, and they're all kind of doing their own thing and often in tension with each other. What their side has built, like when we won in 2008, when Obama had the big 2008 sweep, the other side went back into the lab and they were like, we have to study this. And they studied the Obama distributed organizing model. They studied Saul Alinsky, they studied Occupy, and they said, we have to build. And what they have built is actually qualitatively superior to what we have as a movement. I'm just going to say that. And the structure of it, I call it a meta church or a meta movement, which is that all the pieces, their leadership, their political leadership, their movement, their media, their arts and culture people are all integrated in sort of like a secular mega church, meta church way that it's all integrated such that they have millions of missionary evangelicals who are preaching the gospel and who feel all part of one thing. It's mega.
MVP Zoom.
Yeah, MVP Zoom, welcome. It's a
Thank you.
mega meta church. And yeah, can everyone mute if you're not talking? And so we have to go into the lab now and build and innovate. And we're thinking about that at the state level. We just brought on Doran Schranz, who many of you know, along with our colleague Javier Murillo, is one of the architects of the Minnesota model. How do we build incredible, sophisticated organizing to transform states? And at the national level and the relationship between national and local and media. So I'm on what I call a loving agitation tour. I'm basically over the break, I'm like texting I didn't want to text our staff, but I'm texting all my movement friends, like, what the fuck are we going to do? What the fuck are we going to do? And I want to invite everyone to join this loving agitation, what the fuck are we going to do campaign. Because I think the more we ask ourselves that, the more we ask each other that and ourselves, the more we're going to come up with ideas, because we actually have to reinvent the movement, right? We have to actually reinvent the left, the Democratic Party, and how we do things. And if we're here in 2 years, in 4 years, and it looks the same as it does now, we're not going to keep we might get lucky and win if they mess up so bad, but we will not have succeeded. And over the course of, if you think about this 4-year trajectory, over the course of these 4 years, people talk about 2025 as an off year. 2025 is our R&D year. It's the year, and especially the first quarter. Yeah, 2025 is not an off year. It is the development phase when we need to reinvent our new winning strategy. And the first quarter of that year, our first 100 days is when we have to lovingly agitate ourselves and each other to face hard truths, ask ourselves big questions, study what the other side is doing, learn from each other, and be inventive, be risk-taking. Not all of the things we try will work, but we're going to have to try a lot of things and new things to get ourselves to a different place. And we were having like a big conversation with our program team yesterday. It's like the world has changed. It's not what it was a year ago. We have to force ourselves to try new things, to experiment, and to have tough conversations, lovingly agitational conversations with all of our partners. That's what we're doing. And that's what I'm doing with you. And it's not always comfortable, and not everyone's going to like it. But we have to have these tough conversations. So, and hopefully that will, and I'm writing a bat signal 5. That's like, I have all these ideas I'm stirring up and talking with people about, and I'm excited to share drafts of it with our community and think about this together, like what's the new formula for winning. And in the meantime, so we have to do this big reinventing the left and Democratic Party and the movement and the media and everything else. At the same time, what are our partners doing? You know, when you're funding our partners in MVP, what are they doing? They're doing so much. They're blocking, building, innovating, winning. They're protecting their communities. They're recruiting and training candidates. They're passing and blocking legislation. They're engaging voters and volunteers, local issue campaigns, so many local elections, more local elections this year than last year. And local elections are so important laboratories to experiment with things while we are figuring out the big things and planning and strategizing, and all the unsexy stuff like 990s and performance evaluations and leadership transitions and everything else that we have to do in this year that allows the amazing stuff to happen. So 2025 is not an off year. It is the R&D phase of the next movement that we're going to build after we move on from this terrible chapter. So without further ado, let's hear from our partners. First, we're going to hear from Gracia and Hutch are going to, you know, who have worked for so many years with immigrant communities, working class communities, trans communities, LGBTQ communities, and we know, you know, who are like most going to get the brunt of all these terrible, the shitstorm. So we want to first hear from the two of them who are like incredible, like they're very parallel to Movement Voter Project. Like we mostly give out money and we also support people in lots of ways. They mostly support a lot of the same partners, but they also give them some money, but they're mostly doing qualitative supporting them. So we thought, you know, Gracia and Hutch would be like two really great people to tell us about like, what are you hearing? What's going on? What the fuck, you know, are we doing? What are we going to do? So that's the first part. And then we're going to hear from Joe Dinkin and Shoshanna Israel from Working Families, who we are inventing this big strategy together we call Battleground Alliance, which is building on the successful models from Battleground New York and Battleground California, because we have to win back the House. There are a lot of things we don't know, but one thing we know is we have to win back the House.
Maintenance people
in
so they're coming between 10 and
2026.
10:30. Again, no.
And we have to block the Trump agenda and in Congress. And how do we do that? In those vulnerable Republican House districts, right? So we are early stage developing the strategy together with many others, and they're going to talk about this really exciting new set of things. So let's get into it. I'm going to introduce Gracia first. And I can't say enough. I learn so much every time I talk with her. And she's also 8 months pregnant. And so Gracia, I'm dying to hear from you. What are you hearing from your partners? And oh, can we get Gracia on?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Okay. Let's spotlight Gracia. Hi.
Hi.
And take it away.
Yeah, no, well, thank you, Billy, for organizing us again. And I was reading and hearting a lot of the comments that I saw on the chat. And before I get started, it's like I want us to take a deep level of gratitude and a reminder that when our brains are in fear, they can't be in gratitude. So just like take a deep breath of gratitude for the space that we're sharing right now. I know it feels so hard to feel proud of the work that you all did, but I want to tell you that from my vantage point, and from talking to dozens of state leaders across the state, Movement Voter Project was like the number one spotlight for most of our partners in terms of political resources. I know that the work that you are doing every day feels like maybe so small, but I know every single one of you gave it your best to make sure that we had a different outcome. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for the investment that you put in the communities, the organizing that you did, and more importantly, for being here. As Billy mentioned, I am very pregnant. I am expecting my first baby boy, and I'm also an immigrant. I was born in Mexico, raised in Mexico until I was 13, moved to the US, was undocumented for many years with my family, experienced the fear and terror that potential deportation from my father felt like. And that was a very important exercise of understanding how my identity and being persecuted in this country was also tied to activism. That's kind of how I ended up going into this route of political activism. I am also someone who is a deep believer of the power of organizing. And while the results of the election might feel shattering and earth shaking, that theory for me has not been untested or challenged. I really still strongly believe that the way in which we go through is through organizing and connection. And I actually think it's reflected in so many of the comments that you all posted, which was like, how will you strengthen yourself? Friends and family and cuddles and connection. That is actually what our movement has, that it can never be replicated by the other side. And I want us to remember that, especially in this first moments and in the first months of the MAGA administration. So I want to share with you all some realities of what our partners are experiencing. And I also want to share with you all some of the things that we're building towards so that we can continue to have not just a resistance, but a proactive adjustment to the world that they're going to be delivering. So one, immediately after election cycle, we had dozens of partners report back to us that individuals, right, like individuals were asking if their social securities were going to be canceled, if they should think about moving from the state because they receive SNAP benefits or some other form of safety net benefit. We had a lot of people, especially with our partners in Nevada, Arizona, and some of the states like Michigan and Wisconsin. So Plan Action, Make the Road Action, Lucha, get dozens, if not almost hundreds of calls from individuals who were asking if they should either self-deport or what were some of the places where for mixed status families, immigration families, that they should make a plan for who would take care of their children if they weren't here. These are heartbreaking decisions that people are making. These are decisions that people are already planning for. What are their contingency plans, whether they are in safety net benefits or if they are, like I mentioned, undocumented. So I just want to reflect back to you all that the realities of the consequences of this administration are not lost in our communities. People are already expecting and planning. We already know, and we have heard it through the news, and I'm not going to speculate on too much on what we will expect, but we already know that there's going to be hundreds of executive actions, probably on day one. We expect that some of those executive actions are also going to be targeted towards immigrants, towards the safety net, towards working class people. But here's the thing that I want us to remember. I think where we're gonna have the most challenges is in choices that feel like they have a short-term gain, but have a huge long-term impact. So I'll give you an example. Community Change Action, we have been part of the childcare fight for many, many years. It is a possibility that we might have a proposal from the MAGA administration for a renewal of the childcare tax credit. The childcare tax credit reduced poverty immensely in the US while we were receiving it. And it might be that we have a proposal for the childcare tax credit, but it comes with strings that adjust the infrastructure of the safety net, meaning like it could be that we now have to exclude single parent households and they have to be married households in order to receive this benefit. It has a short-term gain with a long-term impact about the infrastructure and who gets to benefit from our safety net fight. I mentioned those choices because those are going to be really hard choices that we have to continue to be informed by the base and by the people that are directly impacted. The pathway to have those conversations is our state people. It's conversations like this. It's around how do we make sure that the people that are going to be the most impacted are at the center of delivering and building those strategies to make those choices. That is part of the reason why we at Community Change Action have been in conversations with our state partners since day one, not necessarily to prepare us for all the possibilities, but to prepare us to have that pipeline of communication for when the possibilities arise. Doesn't mean that we're going to get everything right. Doesn't mean we're going to respond to everything, but it does mean that we have to build the pipelines of communication so that the people that are the most impacted are at the center of the strategy. The other thing that I want to mention and that we keep replicating at the organization is the fight is not defense. The fight is defense and offense. I saw from you guys' comments, and Billy mentioned it earlier, which is the local elections that we're going to have are an opportunity for offense. The state legislatures that we're going to start really soon, and some states already started, those are opportunities for offense. We cannot build our strategy on just defending the status quo, because if the elections have a takeaway is that people are discontent with the status quo. We cannot just defend the status quo because the status quo is not enough. So we have to offer those other possibilities. So when we say guaranteed income or childcare for everyone, what does that really mean? What does that really feel like? And we do believe that the best pathway for us to create the offensive fights is at the state, county, and local level. And we will be continuing to have those conversations with our partners to create those strategies. Are they all figured out? No. Does it require money? Yes. Does it require for us to also continue to push at the federal level and respond to the threats? Absolutely. But we're going to have to balance because this is going to be a marathon. The last thing that I want to mention is immigration. It is disappointing. It's not even the strong enough word that I want to use, but it is a lack of leadership and vision from our democratic leaders, the way that they're behaving around the issue of immigration. We saw it from the votes on the Laker-Riley bill that they are actually 43 Democrats, 8 Senate Democrats who are literally helping the Republicans deliver on their anti-immigrant agenda. They are cloaking it as a sign of being strong against crime. And I think that it is a lack of political calculus and long-term vision that is allowing for that. So as we continue to move on the painful pathway of the reverse gains that we've had for so many years on immigration, I just want us to continue to inform Democrats when we're disappointed at them, when we know that they're making a short-term political calculus versus a long-term political impact, and that it is totally fine for us to continue to both direct our rage in multiple directions when it doesn't align with our values. So I just want to again end with a few of our priorities and one more invitation, which is we at Community Change Action, we are determined to continue to build organizing infrastructures with state leaders, with our individual members, to continue to protect the safety net infrastructure that we have in our country and to offer additional pathways where the offense is here. A friend of mine actually during the break reminded me, because I was, as many of you all were, tired of the evaluation of this last cycle and feeling so depleted from pouring myself into winning and then watching it do a complete turn of events. And what he recommended was like, can you, instead of evaluate the time that you lost, remember the times when you were winning? And what was the magic formula that was happening in those times? And what I remember the most in the moments when I felt that we were winning is when people were sharing their individual stories and connecting it back to why this campaign mattered to them and mattered to their community. So I just want to invite us, not just as investors, but as individuals and as storytellers, that this is a time of storytelling. This is a time when we can actually recreate what this new world will mean, what it means for us to protect each other, and not just from a political perspective, but from a community and organizing perspective. I just, again, want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, and I can't wait to continue to see you all be connected in our partners, in our communities, and in this beautiful network that you all have built.
Gracia, thank you for sharing that. Like, I love how you ended that. The magic formula for winning, it's us sharing our personal stories and listening to each other and leaning into the empathy and the love and the connection. Like that's it, you know? And you're going to be holding, and so many people are going to be holding so many people in so much pain. Like the ICE raids are already ramping up, and we're going to be asked to hold a lot of pain, you know, while we are fighting defense and for the beautiful future that we need. So thank you so much for all the work you do, for sharing. And if people have questions for Gracie in the chat, you can put them in there. And also that we should have donation information. Okay, now I want to bring up Hutch from Equality Federation, which is an incredible network of all the state and many local LGBTQ organizations. And Hutch, it's so great to have you with us. And thank you for everything you're doing and holding. Tell us what's going on, what are we doing, and what the fuck are we going to do?
Thank you for unmuting me. And thank you for having me here. I'm really, really excited to be talking to this particular group of people. Like Gracia, I want to start with some gratitude, because the support of MVP and the donors of MVP and the capacity building program at MVP has really been key to our network readiness. So Billy talked about our network. Before I talk about kind of what are we going to do, I want to tell you a little bit more about the Equality Federation Network. We are the national network of state-based LGBTQ policy groups. So if you live in a state, I see some folks here from California. Equality California is our member. I see some folks here from Colorado. One Colorado is our member. So we have a whole list of about 50 members who we work with. And then we also work with sort of maybe the next rung out of groups that aren't yet members, but that are partnering with our membership. We also do a ton of cross-movement organizing. So working to get our partners connected on the ground with groups that are doing economic justice work, immigration work, reproductive justice work. And so what Billy said about rethinking and really innovating in the progressive movement really speaks to me a lot as I think about how do we build the infrastructure that we need to turn this around and to win. And for those of you who follow LGBTQ issues and rights, you'll know that January 20th is not it's not going to be a big shift for us. We are already in a really difficult position when it comes to state level LGBTQ policy. So what we expect is that things are going to be harder. The big impact of this particular, the federal level of elections, we are going to see more and more anti-LGBTQ legislation introduced and passing in this new Congress, and with a president who is not going to stop it, unlike the last administration. Although, I can't say that much. We actually just, Biden signed a bill for to fund the military that unfortunately contained anti-LGBTQ policy as well. So it's not always just the other side that doesn't pay attention to the needs. And it's what Gracia was saying, like some of these things are going to come through as riders on must pass bills. And, and I put must pass in big scare quotes there. The National Defense Authorization Act was the one that Biden signed. And of course, we have to fund the military. Let's not get too deep into questioning that. But when in doing so, they added anti-trans medical care for families of military service members. So, and that happened obviously under this current Congress or under the previous Congress. And now we have the current Congress, which as one of the first bills that they passed an anti-trans sports ban day before yesterday. So we know that things are going to happen, right? This is going to come down. It's going to be a tidal wave. As Gracia mentioned, we're going to have hundreds of executive orders on the first day. And, we've seen Project 2025. We've seen, what a number of their plans for LGBTQI plus people are going to be. They're going to try to mess with HIV funding. They're going to try to mess with global HIV funding through the PEPFAR and through the Global Equality Fund. And so I think that, we have a sense of what's going to happen. Like Grecia, I'm really concerned about volume. I'm concerned about us getting distracted and really trying to get focused on what we have the power and what we have the ability to impact. And like, when people ask me, like I'm sure many of you after the election, what are we going to do? Or as Billy just said, what the F are we going to do? I said, like I said, I don't think things are going to be that different for the state level LGBTQ movement, because we've been in this spot for the last 4 years where they keep filing numbers of anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ bills. And we've been in the defensive posture. And I think what's changing for us as a movement is that we are trying to move into that more offensive posture. So not just block, but also build. And when I say build, I don't necessarily just mean passing proactive policies, because in some states that's just not possible. But what I do mean when I say build is that we have, and I got together with 90 other LGBTQ leaders from across the country. And we sat down and we said, what is our priority? And obviously there are legal groups within that, and their priority is going to be to monitor the legal situation, sue when appropriate, and represent folks for impact litigation when possible. But when it comes to the advocacy and organizing groups, we know that right now, this is not an off year for us. This is a build year. This is a year where base building and organizing has to be key. I think we're going to see, like I said, a number of really terrible legislation coming. And so just to give folks a sense of what that could be at a federal level, we've already seen the House Rules package, right? That lists anti-trans policy as a legislative priority. We can, I know that we're going to see, obviously, this athlete ban just passed through the House. And, I also don't want to focus just on LGBTQ specific bills. What Gracia mentioned around what's happening with the preparations for mass deportations and the directing of federal funds and potentially even military to be used for this, that is going to have an outsized impact on LGBTQ people, especially trans people who are currently in detention. We're probably going to see a federal employee DEI ban. We're probably going to see increasing bans on the use of federal funds for transgender healthcare, whether that's currently happening in the US or abroad. We're expecting the global gag rule to potentially be amended to include trans. And so, you know, we know that some shit is coming down the pike. And I don't think we're going to see a ton of difference in the states, right? For those of you who've been following along with us, we've got medical care bans for young people in the states. We've got curriculum censorship. So basically, a lot of stuff trying to preempt local control, things where local school districts might want to teach LGBTQ history, but the state passes a law saying you can't do that. So we're going to see more and more of that. But I actually am hopeful. And Billy had asked, like, what are our hopeful takeaways for what's happening? And, you know, that can feel really hard. But my hopeful takeaway is that we have this network. We have 50 organizations who have been fighting. One of our organizations is about to celebrate its like 50th birthday. So we've been around for a while. And we're growing. We're adding more organizations to support groups like the Arkansas Black Gay Men's Forum, which works on HIV policy in Arkansas, like Blackout in Missouri, which works with communities of color on HIV prevention in Missouri. We are adding more groups that focus just on trans rights, like Trans Ohio and Louisiana Trans Advocates. And these groups are getting stronger and able to do their work because of the work that MVP funds. The capacity building program makes sure that these groups have access to the voter file. Louisiana Trans Advocates was one of the, and Trans Texas, Louisiana Trans Advocates are two of the first groups that are trans specific that have used VAN. And for those of you who, I think probably I'm speaking to the choir here, but it's having access to the list of voters who they need to talk to get them out to vote, to educate them about elections, to get them into to testify at the Capitol. And so, you know, these things are absolutely useful, absolutely necessary for our groups to do their work. And so we are just really, really grateful for that. So we're ready. I mean, I think we're ready to fight. We're actually concurrent with this meeting right now. My team is running a legislative prep session for our entire network to come in and say, here are the things we're offering. We're going to help you scale up your phone programs. We're going to get people to call their legislators and let them know how they feel about these proposed policies. We are going to, you know, find help, as Billy mentioned, we move some money. We're not a big funder, but we move targeted money, specifically C4 money, to our groups to help them hire lobbyists and bring their people to the Capitol, the folks that they're organizing. So, you know, we are ready, and that's what we're going to do, and we are going to keep working at that state level. And I think that we can also learn at the federal level from the states that have been fighting this for so long. So states like Texas, Louisiana, Missouri, we've actually developed talking points, strategies. We've done research around these issues because of the fight that we've had for the last 3 years. So we are more ready to fight some of these, or to at least communicate about some of these Trump policies. Some of these are going to be done by fiat, so we can't actually fight them. Hopefully our legal groups will swoop in and help them, you know, the courts have an opinion about some of those. The last thing I want to say before we move on is that we, you know, LGBTQ policy, the spotlight has been on it for the last several years around the negatives. So we've, you know, all of the things I just listed, all of the bans, right? Bans on saying gay in public school, bans on trans folks participating in sports, bans on gender affirming care, sex redefinition. We're seeing a lot of states try to define sex in a really specific way, which then, you know, forecloses rights for trans people in their states. But we are actually seeing some really amazing things happening. And I would love for folks to pay attention to this as we move into the next year. States are getting together. Billy mentioned the Minnesota model. Minnesota, for the last year, has been passing an incredible progressive policy for LGBTQ folks and for, you know, other folks across the working families across the spectrum. we're going to see more of that. We're going to see states where we have the opportunity to, I hate to use this term, Trump-proof, but to create more refuges, to create more expansive rights for folks so that we do have places for folks to go. And we have the models for when, as Billy mentioned, this moment is over. What are we going to do? What are the things that we're fighting for? We're seeing, for example, HIV be decriminalized in many states. I learned this from my HIV program folks. The last time HIV criminalization laws were updated in Maryland was 1989. We didn't have any of the extremely effective treatments for HIV that we do now. And so it's time, and we are actually moving really quickly on that. So we're 4 years into a campaign to do that, and I'm hoping this year is going to be the year that we're going to decriminalize HIV in Maryland. We're also creating more access to drugs like PrEP and PEP by making them available at pharmacies. And even a state like Alaska is hoping to move non-discrimination protections this year. So, I think that we can't focus too much on just all of the bad stuff that's happening. We have to continue to resource the proactive fights that are happening. And like Gracia said, we have to be able to say what we're fighting for. And whether that's through telling our stories, by organizing, by showing up at the Capitol and saying, we want this type of world for queer people. We want this type of world for immigrants. We want this type of world, for our children. And we are going to do that. So we're ready, we're organized, and we're going to keep doing that. And I'm hoping that we are, we'll be able to communicate. We'll be able to communicate around all of the bad things that are raining down to actually communicate some of the wins that we have. And going back to what I said around blocking and building being around building our base, the other win that I'm hoping we'll see over the next year is a real shift to a focus on organizing and base building and political education for our membership. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back over to MVP. And again, just so much gratitude for y'all and for everything that you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your partnership, Hutch, and yeah, we're excited to work with you toward getting the future that we need. And with that, we are going to pivot to talking about an emerging project that is just being formulated right now with a bunch of partners with Working Families Party. You might have heard me talk about Battleground America. We're now calling it Battleground Alliance, which is essentially a two-part thing to stop the Trump agenda in Congress. Right now, they can only afford to lose 3 votes in the House on everything they want to pass, and to set ourselves up right now to win the House and make gains in the Senate in 2026. So I'm going to pass it to our partners, Joe Dinkin and Shoshanna Israel from Working Families. We just pulled him out of a staff meeting. Thanks for stepping out of the staff meeting to join us. And Joe's going to give us the framework. He's the national deputy, and then Shoshanna, the Mid-Atlantic/Pennsylvania person. Who's so brilliant, but she must not be that brilliant because she didn't win Pennsylvania. Shoshanna, we're so disappointed in you. But anyway, no, seriously, over to you, Joe. Joe, oh yeah, you guys are muted. Let's unmute.
I'm unmuted now. Hey, thank you. Hey everybody, Joe Dinkin here, Deputy National Director at the Working Families Party, calling in today from our National Executive Committee retreat in Austin, Texas. And I'm just going to use, before I really get into this, I'm just going to use panelist privilege for a moment to introduce a special celebrity guest, my boss, my party leader, WFP National Director, sitting right next to me, Maurice Mitchell.
Hey everyone, it's so good to see you
Welcome.
all. Happy New Year, sending lots of love and light to all of you. And I'll just be brief, but the one thing I want to say is that, this particular subject, the idea that the entire country, every single state, every single area, every single community is a battleground. We believe that very deeply, and we believe that the ultimate battleground is for the hearts and minds of working people. that's been our theory for some years now, and we're happy that so many people, including a lot of folks who are part of more of the establishment inside of the Democratic Party, for example, are having this conversation about how to really engage and organize working people. To me and to us, that is the beginning and the end of how we regain our democracy. We focus like a laser on the hearts and minds and the spirits of working people, people in North Philly, people in the Mid-Atlantic that we're going to be talking more about, people in both suburban communities, rural communities, and urban communities who want a fair shake, who want to have more power to protect their families, who want to build a bigger we. And we're going to do that in the most rigorous and serious way possible in this next political period. And I'm really excited about the work that Joe and Shoshanna are going to be sharing with you all. All right, take care.
Thanks, Maurice. Getting my headphone back. So, hey, everybody, and hey, MVP community. I guess I want to start with this. It may not seem like it today, but January 20th, it's not only Inauguration Day, it's also the beginning of the end of the Trump era. And the reason that is true is because Trump won an extremely narrow election. He won an election on the backs of discontent with the economy, discontent with the status quo, but that doesn't mean he has a mandate for all of the crazy things he and the Republicans in Congress are going to try to do. And in fact, they actually don't offer any solutions to the problems and pain that working people in America are facing. So that means there is an opportunity to draw a cleavage between the voters, including some people who voted for Trump, some people who voted for Republicans, plenty of people who didn't vote at all, and the Republican agenda in Congress. So I want to start this story by going back to 2 years right after the midterms, when WFP, along with some other organizations, built a new piece of infrastructure. We looked at the map after the midterm elections and saw that the red wave, the midterm red wave that was expected, missed in most of the country. It, didn't seem to hit in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Georgia, but it sure did hit pretty hard in the battleground districts, the purple parts of New York and California. And so we decided to figure out what we could do and what we needed to do to flip those districts back. And we needed something more than just a last 3 weeks GOTV plan. What we needed was a new piece of political infrastructure, a new coalition that brought together WFP and community organizations and unions and groups like Indivisible and groups like Planned Parenthood and donor communities like MVP and the Democracy Alliance, and many others, to focus on a 2-year arc that started with grassroots organizing, protest, and media work in those competitive districts that had really seen the political infrastructure atrophy over a period of years, that told the truth about what Republican members of Congress were actually doing in Congress, were actually voting on, and what it would mean for working people in their districts, that then created the headlines and the proof points for what was wrong with those Republican members, that then fed into mass volunteer and organizing and paid canvassing and media concentrated on those purple districts in New York and California. What usually happens when a president wins is they gain a lot of seats for their party in the House and the Senate. And that didn't happen in Congress. And that's because of the work of Battleground New York and Battleground California. In New York, out of the 5 districts we targeted, flipped 4 of them away from Republicans who had won seats in the 2022 midterms. 4 Republicans in a special election, and then 1 in a special election, 3 more in November lost their seats. 3 more Republicans in purple congressional district in California lost their seats. And so that's a net gain of 7 Democratic seats. That is part of why the margins in Congress are so narrow right now. And so, as Billy said, Republicans in Congress have a 3-seat majority. That means if we can slow them down when they try to do things like cut taxes on the rich, cut funding for healthcare for working people, and all the things we know that a Republican Congress is dreaming of doing, we can make it hard for them to pass their agenda. We can slow them down, and we can set up our wins in all of the districts that we need to be winning in 2026. And so I don't need to take a lot longer than that. I will kick it over to Shoshanna Israel, the Mid-Atlantic WFP and Pennsylvania WFP, to talk about what that program looks like in one district. And there's, depending on how you count, 10, 12, 15, or even as many as 20 of these districts around the country where we need to be building this campaign in right now. So Shoshanna, over to you.
Thank you, Joe. Like everybody said, I'm Shoshanna. I'm the Pennsylvania person. I think that's going to be my new job title here at the Working Families Party. I'm from Philly, the greatest city in the world. But today we are talking about not Philadelphia. And is it possible to get my little map up? Thank you. So in Pennsylvania, Billy talked just a minute ago about the 3 seats that Republicans can afford to lose before they are not able to pass anything in Congress. And I'm going to introduce you to 3 congressional districts in one state, one swing state, where Republicans got less than 51% of the vote. So that's Congressional District 7, which is in the Lehigh Valley. People might know the cities of Allentown or Easton, Pennsylvania. The 8th Congressional District, which has the sort of famous Northeast PA. If you Scranton Joe, this is where the Scranton Joe voters all were. And then the 10th Congressional District, which is in the South Central region, where the capital of Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, York City, and other smaller municipalities in that part of the state. And so these 3 districts represent the best opportunity to do 2 really important things. One is push the Republican incumbents really, really hard to know that they don't have a mandate to pass the really shitty parts of the Trump agenda, that they don't have a mandate to destroy Medicaid, that they don't have a mandate to pass all of these horrible discriminatory policies, and try to stop that agenda in its tracks. And when they fail us, when they fail our communities, to set up the fight in 2026 to take these seats back. And what's also interesting about these 3 congressional districts in particular is they all have these communities, like the cities of Allentown and Easton and Bethlehem and Harrisburg, where there are communities of color and low-income working people who are increasingly moving away from the Democratic coalition. And we at the Working Families Party believe that we can do organizing to get those voters back into our coalition by pushing forward a really robust, exciting agenda that puts money in people's pockets and takes on their shitty landlords and their shitty bosses and makes an actual argument for why we want to vote for Democrats and champions for working people. So if you'll go to the next slide. I don't want to spend too much time on these 3 folks because hopefully we see their faces for like 2 years and then they're gone into the dustbin of history. But we have 3 incumbents that we want to hold accountable to the people in their district. Ryan McKenzie in the 7th district, that's in the Allentown region. Rob Bresnahan in the 8th congressional district, that's in the Scranton Northeast PA area. And then some of you might know Scott Perry, one of the architects of the January 6th insurrection, busing folks to go take over the Capitol in the 10th congressional district. And really what you need to know about these folks is that they're all terrible. And we are expecting that all of them will vote to destroy Medicaid, which we think that in these districts is going to be extremely damaging to people, that they're all, not supportive of any protections for workers. Like there are no moderate Republicans really anywhere at this point, but these are folks that are going to take the Trump agenda and run with it. And we want to make sure that the voters in their districts know that that's what they're doing, that they're choosing the Trump agenda versus the people that live in their communities. And if you'll go to the next slide. Like I said, these districts run through communities where we are actively building power with our coalition. And so, for example, in the 7th congressional district, we work with our partners at SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, with Make the Road, with Pennsylvania Stands Up, to do work in the municipalities. So this year we're poised to take over and actually govern on the Allentown City Council so that we can give voters something to actually show up for, not just something to show up against. And so while Republicans are, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, destroying Medicaid, we can pass like best in the state protections for renters in Allentown to show them a vision of governing that's positive and like actually meets their needs, while Republicans are, selling them out like just down the street. And so we believe that that two-pronged strategy, both showing up in districts, with protests, with, well-placed, op-eds and, showing up outside of people's district offices, with, earned and paid communications to voters in these districts to hold, these electeds, these Republican electeds accountable, and that positive vision of actually governing in these municipal elections to show them something that actually is worth showing up for, that doing those two things together is how we're going to set ourselves up to take these 3 districts and the majority in the federal government and in the House back in 2026. And so this is a horrible year, and there are going to be many terrible things that happen over the next however long, but this is the most clear that my team, my organization, the people that we work with have felt about the work that we need to do, because the erosion of the working class base of the Democratic Party is a long-term problem that we need to work together to address. And that means actually putting forth a proactive vision for who we are, rather than just fighting on the defensive. And then the last thing I'll say is the way that a lot of the mainstream funding ecosystem works is that a bunch of money gets thrown on television in the last 6 weeks in these congressional races. And part of the reason we're so grateful for MVP and for the partnership of everyone on this call is that thinking about this work now and setting up the work that, it's going to take to get those couple thousand voters back in Allentown and the couple thousand voters back in Bethlehem, starting that work now in 2025 is how we put ourselves in the best position to win in 2026, because we've tried it the other way and quite frankly, it doesn't work. And so I'm so grateful to the partnership of everybody here, and excited to go fight win over the next 2 years.
Yes. Thank you, Shoshanna. It has been so great to work with you. We've had many scheme sessions about Pennsylvania, and I love the way you layered the local races, the state races, and there's also a really big state Supreme Court race in Pennsylvania. But let's actually go to the next slide, because we're gonna close it out. I want to let people know, if people are like, okay, where do I invest? What's money going to go to? First of all, you can give to any of the groups directly on this call. We'll send out information. How do I make an impact in the first 100 days? And if you're giving to MVP, what is the money going to go toward? And I'm just going to lay out what the areas are. So block, how do we impact Congress in the first 100 days? This new Battleground Alliance thing that's just forming is we're going to be moving money toward seeding it, the work that Working Families and many others are doing. You can contribute directly to Working Families, or through MVP, we'll be funding a variety of state and national actors who are going to be working in 20 plus districts. And this has never been built quite like this before. So blocking federal legislation. 2, building and strengthening ecosystems in 2026 states. We're going to have a lot more about that. We're going to have a briefing. Our next briefing in February is going to be about Wisconsin. But we're going to do deep dives in how do we strengthen the ecosystem, like Shoshanna was talking about, in all of the key battleground states. Innovating. I mentioned that, lots to do on that. We'll talk about that in future calls. But we have to help groups have the resources now to think big and innovate, to do the R&D they need to do in their states to get to where things need to be. Winning. We have to win the House, Battleground Alliance again. And then the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, I'm just going to talk about really quickly. We're going to do a whole call on it next time. It's in 10 weeks. And last time we moved about 2 million to groups to win that state Supreme Court race. So far, we've only raised 110,000. So we have to move. That is actually the #1 thing, that if you give partisan money to MVP now, we will get it to support the Wisconsin State Supreme Court race, which is must win. We've made so much progress there, picked up, I think, 14 state legislative seats because of the redistricting alone from that. If we lose this race in 10 weeks on April 1st, we will lose all of that progress. So that is the #1 thing your money is going to go to. And then working with partners, like Equality Federation and, Community Change and others on the rapid response to protect communities along with our local partners. I put the stars by the ones that your money will go to first. First, the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, then the Battleground Alliance. And we are, I'm going to take one more minute to close out the call and say how you can donate. So let's just flip through these slides really quick. If you're moving under $5,000, the best thing is just donate online. If you're moving over $5,000, contact your MVP philanthropic advisor, liaison, or email advisor@movein.vote if you want help figuring out stock transfers or complex things. We're building out planned giving. We have this incredible team of philanthropic advisors that I really don't say enough about. They're all like incredible thought leaders, and I get so many great reports from people who just love working with our team. And they are here to help major donors give money in the most strategic way, whether it's giving it with and through MVP or being honest brokers to make referrals to other groups. So just want to give a huge shout out to the MVP team. We have such an incredible team. Our state advisors, our philanthropic advisors, our incredible operations team that makes it all work. And just want to thank all our incredible guests on the call. Hutch, Grecia, Shoshanna, Joe, surprise guest Maurice, and all of you. And we are building a movement of donors. So there's more, so in addition to donating, if you're new to MVP, you haven't already heard this, we are building local teams. And we're going to talk about that on the office hours right after the call. So I am going to close out this call and say a huge thank you to everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being with us through these hard times. I got so much hope from this call. I thought it was going to be depressing, and now I'm really fired up. So we're going to close out this call, and then we're going to do up to half an hour of open office hours where we can just talk. We can talk about what we're going to do. You can ask questions, and I can lovingly agitate you to organize your people, and we can go from there. So I am going to officially close the MVP call. Thank you for being here. And we are now going to open office hours in our optional MVP office hours community building time in 3, 2, 1.